In a quiet neighborhood, in a house that looked perfect from the outside, life seemed calm and ordinary. The garden was neatly trimmed, and the windows sparkled in the sunlight. People walking past would smile at the sight, thinking it was just another happy home. Inside, however, things were not as peaceful as they appeared. The father worked long hours, trying to provide everything for his family. He loved his children dearly and always made sure they had what they needed. He trusted his fiancée completely, believing she cared for his children as much as he did. She had been charming from the beginning, always polite to neighbors and friendly whenever anyone came over. At first, everyone believed she was the perfect addition to the family. The children, young boy and girl, were full of energy and curiosity. They loved to play in the garden, draw colorful pictures, and laugh at simple jokes. Their laughter often filled the house, bringing warmth to everyone around. The father cherished these moments and looked forward to spending time with them. Even after long days at work, among those who truly understood the household was the maid. She had worked with the family for several years and had grown attached to the children. She watched them closely and cared deeply about their well-being. Over time, she began to notice small things that did not feel right. The fiancé would sometimes speak sharply to the children, demanding that they obey immediately. She would scold them for minor mistakes, or for being too noisy. The children would quickly retreat, looking frightened and uncertain. At first, the maid thought she might be imagining things. Perhaps the fiancé was just strict and trying to maintain order in the house. But as days went by, the incidents grew more frequent. The fiancé would give instructions in a cold, almost mechanical way. The children would follow silently, their eyes downcast. It was different from the way the father interacted with them, which was always gentle and loving. The maid began to see patterns in the fiancé's behavior. She noticed how the fiancé would always stand between the children and the father during certain conversations, subtly controlling what they said and how they acted. There were moments when the fiancé would lock doors or take objects away from the children, making them feel powerless. The maid's heart ached every time she saw the fear in their eyes. One evening, the maid was cleaning the living room when she overheard the children whispering. They were talking about a room in the house that they were not allowed to enter. They spoke in hushed tones, looking around nervously to make sure no one was listening. The maid's curiosity mixed with concern, and she gently asked them what was wrong. The children hesitated at first, then admitted that they were afraid of being in trouble if they went near that room. Their words were small, almost a whisper, but the fear behind them was clear. The maid tried to speak to the fiancé casually about the children's behavior, hoping to understand the reason behind it. The fiancé smiled and reassured her that everything was fine, that the children were just being silly. But the maid noticed the tension in her voice and the slight coldness in her eyes. Something was not right, and the maid's worry grew. As days passed, the fiancé's control over the household became more noticeable. She would give strict rules about how the children should eat, play, and even speak. The children began to avoid certain areas of the house and stopped sharing their stories and drawings with the maid. They seemed to shrink a little every day, losing the spark that once lit up their eyes. The maid felt a deep sense of responsibility to protect them, but she also feared what might happen if she confronted the fiancé directly. One morning, the maid noticed the children behaving strangely. They were quiet and hesitant, standing close together as if seeking comfort from one another. When she asked them what was wrong, they looked at her with wide, anxious eyes, but said nothing. The maid could see the fear in their expressions, the way they held their hands tightly and avoided making eye contact. She knew that something serious was happening behind the closed doors of the house. The fiancé seemed to sense the maid's concern. She would smile in public, always polite and composed, but her demeanor at home was different. She would give sharp orders and watch the children closely, making sure they did not step out of line. The maid observed the fiancé's behavior carefully, noting every action, every word, and every subtle gesture. She felt that if she did not act, something terrible could happen to the children. One afternoon, the maid was tidying up near the kitchen when she noticed the children were missing. Panic rose in her chest. She called their names softly, then louder, but there was no answer. Her heart pounded as she searched the house, checking every room. When she reached the part of the house where the fiancé spent most of her time, she hesitated. The door was slightly ajar, and she could hear faint movements inside. She pushed the door gently, and the fiancé looked up with a calm, controlled smile. The fiancé explained that the children were in their room, playing quietly, but the maid's instincts told her that something was wrong. She knocked softly on the children's door, calling their names again. This time, she heard a tiny, scared voice whisper back. It was not the joyful sound she was used to. It was a sound of fear and hesitation. The maid felt a chill run down her spine. She knew she had to find out what was happening before it was too late. That evening, the maid stayed close to the children, trying to comfort them without alarming the fiancé. She noticed how the children flinched at certain movements, how they clung to her as if she was their only safe place. The fiancé seemed unaware of the maid's protective attention, or perhaps she chose to ignore it. The maid realized that she had to be vigilant, to observe every detail, and to be ready to act if necessary. The children began to confide in the maid in small ways, telling her about the rules they had to follow, the things they were not allowed to do, and the moments when they felt scared. Their words were short and careful, but the maid understood the depth of their fear. She knew that she could not let this continue. The fiancé's control over the household was growing, and the children's lives were at stake. That night, as the house grew quiet and the father returned from work, the maid sat in the kitchen, thinking. She thought about the responsibility she bore, the love she had for the children, and the courage she would need to protect them. She knew that her observations and instincts were the key to uncovering the truth. She also knew that one wrong move could put everyone at risk. The tension in her chest was heavy, but she was determined to keep the children safe. The part of the house where the fiancé spent most of her time was quiet now, but the maid could feel the underlying tension. She kept watch over the children, whispering words of comfort and safety. The children, in turn, began to trust her more, feeling that they had someone on their side. The bond between the maid and the children grew stronger, built on trust, empathy, and the silent understanding of shared fear. By the end of the week, the maid had gathered enough small clues to know that the fiancé's behavior was not just strictness, but something far more dangerous. The children's fear, the hidden rules, the fiancé's cold control, painted a picture of a household where innocence was at risk. The maid realized that she could no longer wait or ignore the signs. She needed to be ready for the moment when she could act, to save the children from harm. And so, the quiet house, with its sparkling windows and perfect garden, held a secret that nobody outside could imagine. Inside, the children were scared. The fiancé's control was growing, and the maid's heart was heavy with worry. But amidst the fear and tension, a small spark of hope remained, the hope that courage, vigilance, and love could protect the children and uncover the truth that lay hidden behind the doors of the house. The days following the maid's first worries passed with quiet tension in the house. Each morning, the children moved like shadows, careful not to draw attention. They whispered to each other, their voices soft, full of fear, and often paused when the fiancé passed nearby. The maid watched over them, noticing every glance, every movement. She felt the weight of responsibility pressing on her chest, knowing she had to protect these small, trusting lives. The fiancé's control over the household grew stronger with each passing day. She began enforcing strict routines, monitoring the children's every action. Breakfast had to be finished within a certain time. Toys had to be arranged perfectly. And laughter that was too loud was met with a sharp look or a cold remark. The children learned quickly to comply. But behind closed doors, they would cling to each other, trying to feel safe in a home that was becoming more threatening. One morning, the maid noticed the boy was unusually quiet while eating breakfast. Normally, he would chatter and giggle, sharing little stories about school or dreams he had the night before. Today, he barely touched his food, staring down at his plate, hands trembling slightly. When she asked if he was feeling unwell, his sister whispered for him to stay quiet. The maid's heart ached. She knew that the fear of punishment from the fiancé was so strong that it silenced even a young child. The maid tried to create small moments of comfort. She would talk gently to the children while folding laundry or preparing meals. She told them little stories, encouraging them to imagine happy places and fun adventures. The children responded quietly, sometimes smiling for a brief moment, though the shadows of fear never left their eyes. The maid knew she had to be patient. She could not force them to speak about their fear. She could show them that someone cared. One afternoon, the fiancée ordered the children to clean the house alone while she rested in her room. The children moved hesitantly, cleaning in silence, avoiding mistakes at all costs. The maid observed closely, keeping her distance, careful not to alert the fiancé to her concern. She noticed small signs that alarmed her: a book knocked to the floor. A tear quickly wiped away, the way the boy flinched when the fiancé's footsteps approached. Each observation confirmed that the children were living in fear, and the situation was growing more dangerous. The maid began paying attention to the fiancé's patterns. She noticed that certain rooms were off limits to the children, and when they tried to enter, they were met with anger. The fiancé's instructions were always precise, her tone sharp, her gaze unwavering. The maid realized that the fiancé was not just strict but controlling in a way that was harmful to the children. She also noticed how the father remained oblivious, distracted by work, trusting the fiancé completely. The maid felt the burden of secrecy. She had to watch, gather evidence, and plan carefully, all while keeping the children safe. One evening, as the maid was tidying the kitchen, she overheard the children whispering again. They spoke of being locked in a certain room when they did something the fiancé did not like. The word sent a chill through her. She pressed gently for more information, and the children revealed in quiet whispers that they had been punished in ways that frightened them. The maid listened carefully, taking in every detail, storing each piece of information in her mind. She knew that action would be necessary soon, but she had to wait for the right moment. The fiancé seemed to sense something. She began checking on the children more often, her presence imposing and controlling. The maid adjusted her movements, ensuring she was always nearby, keeping the children within reach and comfort. She tried to shield them from the fiancé's scrutiny while gathering evidence. The balance was delicate. Any wrong move could endanger the children and herself. As the days went by, the children began to exhibit signs of distress that could not be ignored. They would wake in the night, crying silently, clutching each other for comfort. They stopped drawing and playing as much, their laughter replaced by quiet murmurs and hesitant smiles. The maid stayed with them during these moments, holding their hands, whispering reassurance, promising them that someone would protect them. It was exhausting. But she refused to let the fiancé's actions break their spirit completely. The maid also noticed the father's obliviousness. He would come home tired and distracted, missing the subtle signs of distress in his children. He would smile at the fiancée, praising her for keeping the household in order. The maid wanted to tell him everything, to reveal the fear that lurked in the children's eyes. But she feared he might not believe her without proof. She needed more evidence before confronting him. The fiancé's charm and the father's trust made the situation even more complicated. One morning, the maid found the children unusually hesitant as they followed her through the house. They moved as if on tiptoe, looking over their shoulders constantly. When she asked what was wrong, they whispered about being afraid of making a mistake that could upset the fiancé. The maid's heart ached. She realized that the children were living in constant fear, unable to relax even for a moment. She knew that patience alone would not be enough. She needed a plan. That afternoon, the fiancé left the house briefly, giving the maid a small window of opportunity. She decided to gently explore the rooms that had been off limits to the children, looking for clues. She noticed a door that was always locked, with scratches near the handle, as if someone had tried to escape. Her heart raced. She knew that the children had been punished severely, and the fear they lived with was more than just strict discipline. It was cruelty. The maid returned to the children, trying to reassure them and gather more information. They were hesitant at first, but gradually they revealed small details, times when they were left alone in dark rooms, moments when the fiancé's anger seemed uncontrollable, and how they had learned to hide their fear from everyone else. Each story was heartbreaking. The maid felt a deep sense of responsibility and urgency. She could not let the situation continue. That evening, the maid sat quietly in the kitchen, thinking. She considered the dangers and the risks of confronting the fiancé too soon. She also thought about the children's trust, their fragile emotional state, and the need to act carefully. She realized that the smallest mistake could put them in greater danger. Her mind raced with plans and possibilities, trying to find the safest way to protect the children while ensuring the fiancé's actions were exposed. The children went to bed that night with the maid nearby, holding their hands, whispering comfort. She stayed awake, listening to the creaks and noises of the house, alert for any sign of danger. She thought about the father, his trust in the fiancé, and how difficult it would be to convince him without evidence. She also thought about the courage required to face the truth and protect the children from harm. By the end of the week, the maid's concern had grown into a quiet determination. She had gathered enough small clues to know that the fiancé's behavior was harmful and dangerous. The children's fear, the locked rooms, and the fiancé's strict control painted a clear picture. The maid understood that the time to act would come soon, and she needed to be ready. She stayed close to the children, comforting them and observing every detail, waiting for the moment when she could step in and ensure their safety. And so, the quiet house, with its perfect garden and sparkling windows, hid a growing danger behind its doors. The children were scared. The fiancé's control was increasing. The maid's careful vigilance was their only protection. The tension in the house was almost unbearable. But the maid remained determined to protect the children, knowing that her courage and attention could prevent a tragedy and finally reveal the truth. The day the maid discovered the truth began like any other. The children were quiet in the morning, moving through the house as if their small movements would make the world explode. They kept close together, whispering to each other and occasionally glancing toward the fiancé's room. The maid noticed how their small hands would tremble and how they avoided eye contact, their tiny hearts carrying the weight of fear. The fiancé had stepped out to run errands, leaving the house eerily quiet. The maid had taken the opportunity to prepare breakfast for the children and try to comfort them. She spoke gently, asking about their day at school and listening carefully to their whispered replies. The boy's voice trembled as he spoke, and the girl clung to her sister's hand. The maid felt her heart tighten, realizing that these children were living in a world where they were never allowed to feel safe, as she was putting dishes away. The maid noticed the freezer door in the kitchen was slightly open. It was unusual. The fiancé was always careful to close it. At first she thought it was an accident, but then she heard a faint sound, a whimper, almost like a small, frightened voice. Her heart raced. She dropped the dish she was holding and leaned closer, straining to listen. The sound came again, soft and desperate. It was the children. Without hesitation, the maid approached the freezer, her mind spinning with fear and disbelief. She opened the door fully and saw the unimaginable. The two children were locked inside. Their faces were pale, lips blue from the cold, and their eyes wide with terror. They shivered violently, trying to hold on to each other for warmth. The sight struck her like a thunderclap, and a wave of panic surged through her. She acted quickly, pulling the children out of the freezer and wrapping them in warm blankets. Her hands shook, but she spoke to them softly, trying to calm their terror. "It's okay now," she whispered. "You're safe. No one can hurt you here." The children clung to her, crying silently, relief mixing with the lingering fear. The maid held them close, whispering reassurance over and over, her mind racing with questions about how long they had been trapped and what else the fiancé might have done. The children began to speak in tiny, hesitant words. They told the maid that the fiancé locked them in the freezer as punishment. Whenever they made a mistake or did something she did not approve of, their voices were small, almost whispers, but the details were horrifying. They described the fear of the cold, the panic of being trapped, and the desperation they felt when no one came to help. The maid's heart ached for them. She had known the fiancé's behavior was cruel, but hearing the children describe it brought a new level of urgency. The maid quickly called the father, her voice trembling as she explained what had happened. He rushed home immediately, disbelief and horror written across his face. When he saw his children, wrapped in blankets and shivering, his heart broke. He could not understand how someone he trusted could inflict such pain on his children. The children clung to him, finally feeling a small sense of safety in their father's arms. Authorities were called to investigate the household. The maid stayed close to the children, providing comfort and answering questions carefully. She explained everything she had observed: the fiancé's strict control, the locked rooms, the children's fear, and the terrifying experience in the freezer. The children repeated what had happened, their small voices trembling but clear enough to tell the truth. The fiancé was confronted and arrested. Her reaction was a mix of anger, disbelief, and a chilling lack of remorse. Neighbors and friends who had believed in her charm were shocked. The man who had trusted her completely struggled to understand how someone he considered part of his family could do such harm. The maid's courage and careful observation were praised by everyone involved. Her attentiveness and bravery had saved the children from further suffering. The aftermath of the discovery was intense. The children were given medical attention and checked for any lasting effects from their time in the freezer. Doctors and counselors worked with them to begin the process of emotional recovery. Their fear remained, but there was hope that with love and care, they could slowly regain their sense of security. The maid continued to be a steady presence, providing comfort and reassurance at every step. The father faced his own struggles. He had to come to terms with the betrayal, the manipulation, and the pain his children had endured. He felt guilt for trusting the fiancée and not noticing the warning signs. Yet, he knew he had to be strong for his children to rebuild their sense of safety and trust. He spent long hours with them, listening, holding, and reassuring them that they were loved and protected. The maid also reflected on the events, realizing the importance of vigilance and courage. She understood that evil could sometimes hide behind a friendly smile and that children's fear could be subtle, almost invisible. Her careful observation and willingness to act had prevented further harm. The bond between her and the children grew stronger, built on trust, care, shared understanding. The neighborhood was shaken by the revelation. People who had believed in the fiancé's charm were forced to confront the reality that appearances could be deceiving. The story became a lesson for everyone to pay attention to subtle signs, to listen to children, and to act when something feels wrong. The maid's bravery was remembered as an example of how ordinary people could make an extraordinary difference. In the days that followed, the children began to show small signs of relief. They laughed quietly, drew pictures, and spoke softly about things they liked. The trauma of the experience could not be erased overnight, but the warmth of their father's love and the maid's constant support created a foundation for healing. Each day was a small victory, a step toward reclaiming the childhood that had been stolen from them. The house, once a place of fear, slowly became a place of healing. The father worked tirelessly to restore a sense of normalcy. The maid remained a constant presence, watching over the children, ensuring that they never felt alone or unsafe again. Each small smile, each quiet moment of play, was a reminder that courage and love could overcome fear and cruelty. The discovery of the children in the freezer was a turning point. It brought hidden dangers into the open, revealed the truth, and allowed the family to begin the process of recovery. The maid's bravery and the father's dedication combined to create a safe environment, showing that even in the darkest situations, hope could emerge. The children's resilience and the careful attention of those who loved them became a testament to the strength of human courage and compassion. And so life slowly returned to the house. While the memories of fear lingered, the children knew they were protected. The maid continued to be a guiding presence, the father, a source of strength. And the children began to experience the small joys of life again. The story of that day would not be forgotten, serving as a reminder that vigilance, bravery, and love could change lives, even in the face of unimaginable cruelty. After the discovery of the children in the freezer, the atmosphere in the house shifted dramatically. The fiancé was no longer in the home, removed by the authorities. And the sense of immediate danger had passed, but the tension remained. The father and the maid were determined to create a safe environment for the children. Every small step toward normalcy required patience and care. The father spent most of his time at home now. He had canceled unnecessary meetings and appointments, realizing that his children needed him more than anything else. He sat with them at the breakfast table, listened to their stories, and watched for signs of fear or discomfort. At first, the children were hesitant to open up. The trauma they had experienced had made them cautious. But slowly, as they felt the safety of their father's presence, they began to speak in quiet, cautious words. The maid continued to be a source of comfort and guidance. She helped the children with simple routines, teaching them that it was okay to eat at their own pace, to laugh, and to play without fear. She arranged small activities to help the children rebuild their confidence and sense of control. Drawing, coloring, and playing with blocks became exercises not only in creativity, but also in reclaiming a part of the childhood they had almost lost. Counselors and medical professionals were brought in to help the children recover. They conducted gentle sessions to allow the children to express their fear and confusion safely. The sessions were slow and careful, always respecting the children's pace and emotions. Some days were harder than others, with tears and resistance. But the professionals praised the children's resilience and the consistent support of the father and the maid. The father also began reflecting on how the situation had unfolded. He remembered the small signs he had overlooked, the subtle changes in the children's behavior, and the fiancée's unusual control. Guilt weighed heavily on him, but he knew that dwelling on the past would not help. Instead, he focused on the present and the future, dedicating himself to rebuilding trust and ensuring the children never felt unsafe again. He spoke openly with the maid about his plans and listened to her observations and insights. Together, they formed a protective team around the children. The community reacted strongly to the news. Neighbors who had once admired the fiancée were shocked and confused. They had no idea that behind her charming demeanor was a pattern of cruel behavior. Friends and family expressed concern and support, visiting the household to offer help and comfort. The father appreciated the outreach but was careful to maintain a quiet, calm environment for the children. He wanted them to feel secure without feeling the pressure of external opinions or reactions. One day, while helping the children with their schoolwork, the maid noticed small but meaningful changes. The children were beginning to smile more freely, laughing at minor jokes and sharing stories about their day. They were curious again, asking questions and exploring small corners of the house that had previously been off limits. The change was subtle but significant, a sign that the healing process, though slow, was moving forward. The father encouraged open communication at home. He made it clear to the children that they could talk about anything, that their feelings were valid, and that they were not alone. He listened without judgment, sometimes sitting in silence as the children spoke softly about their fears and experiences. The father also shared small moments of joy with them, taking walks in the garden, playing board games and reading stories together. Each activity, no matter how small, was a step toward reclaiming a sense of normalcy. The maid took additional steps to ensure the children felt safe and empowered. She helped them set small goals, such as completing a puzzle or learning a new skill, and celebrated each achievement. She encouraged the children to express their feelings through drawing or storytelling, allowing them to process their experiences creatively. Through these activities, the children began to regain a sense of control over their lives. A feeling they had lost under the fiancé's strict rule, the father and maid also worked together to reinforce safety measures in the house. Doors were checked, locks were reviewed, and routines were established to ensure the children knew where to go and whom to turn to if they felt unsafe. The focus was not only on physical security, but also on emotional reassurance. The children were reminded daily that they were loved, protected, and valued, and that no one could harm them while their father and the maid were there. As the weeks went by, small routines became comforting rituals. Breakfast together, quiet reading time, and evening chats became anchors in the children's day. Each activity helped reinforce the sense that the home was a safe, predictable place. The maid's constant presence provided continuity. Someone who had been through the fear with them and was now a steady, reassuring figure. The children's confidence continued to grow. They began to explore the garden more freely, play games, and even interact with neighbors in small ways. Their laughter returned, though still cautious at first. The father noticed that the children were beginning to trust again, not only in him and the maid, but in the world outside the walls of their home. It was a slow and delicate process, but every small step was a victory. The authorities completed their investigation of the fiancé's actions, covering patterns of manipulation and control. The community learned more about the warning signs that had been overlooked and began to discuss ways to prevent similar situations. The father and maid shared their story carefully, emphasizing the importance of vigilance, trust in instincts, and protection of children. Their experiences became a source of learning and awareness for others. In quiet moments, the father would sit with the children, listening to them recount small daily events. The children began to dream again, sharing hopes and wishes for the future. They spoke about school, friends, and hobbies, and even made plans for small adventures within the neighborhood. Each conversation was a step toward reclaiming a childhood that had been overshadowed by fear. The maid continued to be a central figure in the household. Her care, attention, and courage had not only saved the children, but had helped create a safe, nurturing environment for their recovery. She remained patient, understanding, and empathetic, providing a model of stability and trust. Her presence reassured the children that they were not alone, and that their experiences, though traumatic, could be overcome with support and love. Through consistent effort, the house transformed from a place of fear to a place of healing. The children began to rebuild their sense of security and trust, while the father worked tirelessly to repair the emotional damage caused by the fiancé's actions. The maid's vigilance and dedication provided a strong foundation for this recovery. Together, they began to create a home filled with warmth, safety, and love. The experience left a lasting impact on everyone involved. The children learned that it was possible to survive fear and regain trust. The father understood the importance of observation, awareness, and the courage to act when something felt wrong. The maid realized the power of vigilance, compassion, and decisive action. Their collective journey became a story of resilience, courage, and the transformative power of care and love, and so, life slowly settled into a new rhythm. The house, once a place of silent terror, became a space where laughter returned. Curiosity was nurtured, and love and safety were restored. The children, the father, and the maid learned that even in the aftermath of betrayal and fear, healing was possible, and trust could be rebuilt. Every small smile, every laugh, every gentle touch was a step toward a future where the children could feel safe and cherished once again. Months passed since the discovery of the children in the freezer, and the household slowly began to find a rhythm of safety and trust. The father, once overwhelmed with guilt and disbelief, had become a pillar of strength. He was patient, attentive, and present in every moment with the children, ensuring that they knew they were never alone. Every morning he would greet them with warm smiles and gentle words, and each evening he would read them stories or play simple games. Reinforcing the sense of love and security, the maid remained a constant presence, watching over the children, supporting their emotional growth, and helping them navigate the lingering fear from their past experiences. She encouraged them to express themselves freely through drawing, storytelling, and even play. Each activity was a way to rebuild confidence and remind the children that their feelings were valid. Gradually, the children began to share more, speaking about their likes, dreams, and even the small joys they found in daily life. Therapy sessions continued to be a vital part of the children's healing. Counselors worked closely with them, using gentle methods to help them process the trauma they had endured. There were days filled with tears and moments of hesitation, but slowly, they began to feel safe enough to confront their fears. The professionals praised their resilience and the supportive environment created by the father and the maid. Each small breakthrough, whether it was a shared laugh or a moment of curiosity, marked progress on their journey to emotional recovery. The father reflected deeply on the lessons from the ordeal. He recognized the importance of vigilance, of noticing subtle changes in behavior, and trusting instincts even when everything seems normal. He shared these insights with close friends and family, emphasizing how crucial it was to pay attention to the well-being of children and to act when something feels wrong. His experience became not only a personal awakening, but also a message to the wider community about the importance of awareness and care. The maid's bravery and patience had left a lasting impact on the children. They trusted her implicitly, and her presence gave them a sense of security that was unwavering. She guided them in small, consistent ways, teaching them that their voices mattered and that they had the right to be heard. Through gentle encouragement, she helped them rebuild their confidence, showing that love and attention could heal wounds that fear had left behind. The children began to regain the simple pleasures of childhood. They played in the garden freely, laughed at silly jokes, and explored their surroundings with curiosity. Each new experience was an affirmation that they were safe and that the past could not define their future. They started to engage more with neighbors, shyly at first, but gradually, with genuine interest and joy. The world outside the home was becoming a place of possibility rather than fear. The father also focused on creating new routines that reinforced safety and stability. Simple rituals like family meals, bedtime stories, and weekend walks became anchors for the children. These moments provided predictability, a crucial element for children who had faced uncertainty and fear. They knew that each day would offer comfort, consistency, and protection, helping to rebuild the trust that had been broken. As the family's life settled into this new rhythm, the father and the maid began discussing ways to empower the children. They encouraged them to set small goals, celebrate achievements, and express themselves openly. Whether it was learning a new skill, finishing a school project, or simply sharing a story, the children were learning to trust their abilities and to feel proud of their accomplishments. The sense of empowerment was vital in helping them recover from the helplessness they had experienced under the fiancé's control. The community remained supportive. Neighbors who had once admired the fiancé were now aware of the reality that appearances could be deceiving. They offered help. But the father ensured that the environment remained calm and nurturing for the children, avoiding unnecessary stress. The story of the household became a lesson in vigilance, empathy, and the importance of protecting children from harm. The father and the maid also focused on teaching the children life lessons through gentle guidance and example. They emphasized honesty, empathy, and courage, showing the children that even in the face of adversity, it was possible to choose kindness and strength. The children learned that being brave did not mean never feeling fear. It meant acting and trusting those who cared for them, despite fear. This understanding became a cornerstone of their recovery and personal growth. Over time, children began to express their personalities more fully. Their curiosity returned, along with their natural creativity and joy. They laughed louder, spoke with more confidence, and explored new hobbies with enthusiasm. The fear that had once dominated their lives gradually receded, replaced by a growing sense of self-assurance and hope. The father and the maid celebrated every small step, knowing that these moments were evidence of genuine healing. The father also reflected on the importance of community vigilance and awareness. He realized that his trust in appearances had nearly cost his children dearly. Now he actively shared his experience, encouraging parents and caregivers to listen carefully to their children, observe changes in behavior, and take action when necessary. His story became a reminder that love, attention, and courage could prevent harm and protect the vulnerable. The maid continued her vital role, not only as a caregiver, but also as a model of empathy, vigilance, and courage. She taught the children the importance of looking out for one another, of speaking up when something felt wrong, and of seeking help from trusted adults. Her presence provided continuity and stability, reinforcing the children's sense of safety and belonging. The household gradually transformed into a place filled with warmth, laughter, and hope. The children, once silent and fearful, now expressed themselves freely. The father, who had faced guilt and shock, became a source of unwavering support and love. The maid's dedication and bravery ensured that the children's recovery was steady and strong. Together, they created an environment where fear no longer dictated daily life. The experience left lasting impressions on everyone involved. The children learned resilience, the father learned vigilance, and the importance of attentive care, and the maid's courage became a symbol of hope and protection. Their journey highlighted the transformative power of empathy, love, and courage in the face of adversity. And so, life in the house returned to a peaceful rhythm. The children explored, laughed, and dreamed freely. The father remained a steadfast protector and guide. The maid continued her watchful, loving presence, ensuring that the household remained safe and nurturing. Together, they built a home where trust, safety, and joy could flourish once more, and where the children could reclaim their childhood fully and without fear. The story of their resilience and the bravery of those who protected them would remain a lasting testament to the power of love, courage, and human care in overcoming even the darkest challenges.